cocktail culture has really been built on, like, I call it the back of the bottle model, that like on the back of a bottle of Campari, it's telling you how to make a Negroni. And that if you're having that Negroni in Philadelphia or New York or Shanghai, it should taste the same way every single time. That doesn't really excite me. I mean, it's great to know what a Negroni tastes like at its baseline, but like, do you want all of your beers to taste the same? Do you want wine to all taste the same? No, like variation and the variability and the living element is like the coolest part.
That's what makes it fun.
Exactly. So like, I think that the way we were doing things at Farm, and of course, like, you know, I haven't really said how I made the leap from like, I'm going to be a doctor to I'm going to be a bartender kind of it. But like realizing like there's something here, I can still do the ethnobotany that I was always so passionate about. And no one's having this conversation for some reason.
Welcome back to Brew That Podcast. I'm your host, Richie Tevlin, joined tonight by Dave Argust from Beermill. Welcome back. Evan is out tonight, but thank you for joining us. And tonight we have on James Beard Award-winning author of Slow Drinks, Danny Childs.
What's up? Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on. So we had you on today to talk about your book and kind of learn who you were. And you brought in a Tonewood beer that you made a sour saison. What is it? Is it
Slow Saison? Slow
Saison.
Yes.
We're the beer podcast, and somehow I didn't even know that you did beer. So very excited to try that. Should we drink this later on? Should we bust it open now and start talking?
Let's bust it open.
Let's bust it open now. Yeah, I like that. Then we'll get into it. You got it? Awesome.
Should I talk about it a little bit?
Let's talk about it, yeah, and then we'll kind of normally we start off with the stories, but I agree with you. Let's start with the beer.
All right, so this is part of the collaboration series I did with my homies at Tonewood. Mike Noon, the head brewer at Tonewood Oakland, and I started working on this in, I want to say, the spring of 2023. And so basically to start, we made like a sour barrel. And that sour barrel contained lemon balm, yarrow, and rhubarb. And we let that sit for about 6 months. In that same year, that summer, we went and picked Staghorn Sumac, and we brewed. You guys know Staghorn Sumac?
No.
You ever see?
I don't know what lemon balm is either.
All right, it's a mint. It's in the mint family. It tastes like lemon. It's beautiful aroma. Yarrow, you've definitely seen those flowers. Probably they're like an old medicinal herb. They used to be one of the like old school bittering agents and like grew it in medieval beers. And all right, so then we got Staghorn Sumac. These are the things where when you're driving down 95, they look like furry little deer antlers, staghorns. Like literally look out your window on 95, especially in the winter. It's real easy to see because they'll be on there all winter long. They're red. So, and they're really rich in malic acid like apples. So we took that, brewed a beer, but then we had this barrel souring for 6 months. So then we blended and kind of made our first edition, which was the Staghorn Sumac. This was our second edition one. So this is Slow Saison Volume 2, Wild American Persimmon and Fig Leaf. Fig leaf from the fig tree in my backyard. The Wild American Persimmon from like one of the craziest foraging spots I've ever encountered. It is in Cape May. I'm not going to disclose where. And it's basically as far as you can see, trees that are as full as this, where branches look like they're just going to break because there's so many persimmons hanging on them.
You got a spot.
We got a good spot. So we infuse the fig leaf, the persimmon. Sometimes persimmon can be really astringent, like if you don't get them at perfect ripeness. So like it took a little extra time to like really mellow. And we released this in the winter of 2024. Around that same time, we went and to do our winter one, we went out to the Pine Barrens. You know, we're South Jersey, so go out to the Pine Barrens. We got a whole bunch of white pine and red pine from White's Bog out in Brown's Mill. So we did a pine slow saison. That was volume 3. And then the last one we did was elderflower. And that was from the big elderflower shrub I have in my backyard. And that just released earlier this spring. I want to say like May or June of this year. So we did a full year, although it took 2 years. This is one of my favorites out of all of them. This is now, coming up on a year and a half.
Yeah.
This beer's great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
We had Dan Endicott from Forest in Maine told us all about, like what makes their Saison special is that they're getting the yeast from trees in their backyard and everything. And I know you're the foraging guy, but the fact that you were there's all these flavors in here that are great. And you're we forage for these.
Yeah.
So they're even more special.
Yeah. That's always kind of been at the heart of what I do with slow drinks and how I approach, mixed drinks or non-alcoholic drinks or whatever. And a lot of that has to do with fermentation and stuff. But Mike and Eli and Chris from Tonewood were like, hey, we think that we could really do a really cool series with you. Kind of exploring some of these ingredients that are available here and, hidden in plain sight, for lack of a better phrase.
I like hidden in plain sight because when I walk around, it just looks like there's trees and bushes.
Totally.
I don't know where you're finding this stuff, but it all kind of looks the same to me. I guess not to just stop talking about the beer, but could we talk about kind of your background?
Yeah.
Because I don't know how you got into this stuff and how you're such an expert on this. You said you're from Delco?
I'm from Delco originally. Not super known for its plant life and botanical scene. I was born in Lansdowne. I grew up in Clifton Heights. And when my mom married my stepdad, we moved over to South Jersey to a town called Marlton, which is kind of on the edge of the Pine Barrens, but also it's like Pine Barrens meets deciduous forest. So it's kind of this cool in between. And I went to high school there. So from there, I ended up going to University of Delaware. Originally went for pre-med, but I always was really interested in plant medicine. And so I always wanted to travel and study how indigenous groups use plants for medicine. So while I was there in my sophomore year, I learned about the field of anthropology. I'd never heard of that in high school, which is basically the study of humans. But there's this subset in anthropology called ethnobotany. And ethnobotany is just very broadly how people use plants. And so that could be how they use plants for medicine, for technology, material culture, food, or beverage, right? So I lived in South America and did field work in South America over the course of a few years. I worked with a group in the Amazon called the Shipibo. I worked with a group in northern Patagonia called the Mapuche, and a group in the Atacama Desert in the northern part of Chile, kind of on the border with Bolivia, called the Atacameños or Licanantay. And with each of these groups, I lived with them. I studied with their shamans or medicine men and women, or even just at-home healers to say, when you have a cough, what do you take? How do you prepare it? When your stomach hurts, there's also this whole other element of illness and disease there, which is spiritual. So the shaman is sort of this herbal practitioner, but also this
a therapist
and battling bad spirits in the cosmos and taking hallucinogens to go confront them and sing songs. So it's a whole worldview that's very different than how we view health and wellness. But in that also seeing how they extract plants, whether that's through fermentation or infusion or boiling things down and making a decoction or rubbing it on their skin, whatever. And of course, drank really cool things and ate really cool things and saw things that were just so foreign to me at the time.
And why down there? Is it just more common down there to use plants like this?
Yeah, in my mind then, and still this is true, I always thought that to study ethnobotany, you need to go to a place where the connection between people and the plants around them is still very strong, which it has been for almost all of human history until just a few generations ago, right? Mm-hmm. And so I go down there and, especially these are three very different environments, right? The wettest rainforest in the world, the driest desert in the world, and then a temperate zone. And so seeing how they adapt and work with their environments, the plants they use, but ultimately they're all curing the same ailments that we all have. So my goal was always to continue in academia and go for an MD, PhD joint program where I would do medical anthropology and be able to practice for these in South America.
Is that even a thing? Like, I feel like the U.S. medical MD programs are like anti-plant medicine.
They largely are, although so many of the medicines that are used in Western medicine come from plants.
Okay.
And there's a number of examples of that. But, some people that I really admired, professionals, academics, did the same thing. And they're able to establish these like intercultural health practices where you go down, you're armed with Western biomedical knowledge, but you're also learning all of the medicinal practices of the group, and you're able to treat them more depending on the patient, the sickness, because again, disease isn't just biological, it's spiritual as well with them. So like what determines if a patient wants to see a doctor or see a shaman, right? So you kind of give them all options. So I come home, I take my like MCATs to start applying for med school. And this opportunity arises to live and work on a farm in my hometown in Marlton, on the border of Marlton and Medford, where I actually like worked when I was a kid. I worked there in high school, and I was really good friends with the family. And I'm living there. This is a really long story, maybe for a whole nother podcast.
You're living on the farm?
On a farm in a 15-foot by 15-foot military tent, with a wood-burning stove and a compost toilet. And we did have electricity, so we could like have a string of lights. And I'm immersed in nature. And it was like, it was me and my then girlfriend, afterwards fiance, now wife. She also backpacked through most of South America with me. She
Dude, your life sounds like a travel blog. Like,
and so like we're living immersed in nature, right? Like we moved in September.
In South Jersey.
In South Jersey on a 200-acre farm.
Do you think that going down to South America and viewing things that like are outside of your normal world view, do you think that helped you when you came back?
Totally.
Kind of looking at South Jersey a little bit differently?
100%. I was like, I just traversed from Patagonia to Central America, like by camping and hitchhiking and taking boats and buses and like any way possible. And like, if I could do that, I can do this. It was hard. It was hard. Can I curse?
Yeah.
It was hard as fuck. It was so, the farm was so difficult. Turned out to be like the coldest winter in 37 years.
You were like 22, 23 then?
This was like 20, hold on, let me do a little math. 2014 into 2015. So I'm like 25 going on 26. Mm-hmm. And actually I moved in on my 25th birthday. That was our first day there, September 1st. And it was great in September.
Yeah.
And then early October, like right around now, like was starting to get a little fucking cold. Yeah. It was a tent, right? So like this nor'easter that just came through, I was just telling my friend this, like these would be nights where like I couldn't sleep because the roof is just like, I'm like, is this tent going to fly away across the farm? Like, and we're living out there immersed in nature. I'm like starting to get into foraging a little bit, learning how to farm. And I'm like,
what kind of things were you farming out there?
So originally the farm was like an agro-tourism farm. So like for years, generations, they grew Christmas trees and pumpkins. But there was a lot of space that wasn't used. And so our goal was like, we can plant like fruit, and we can plant vegetables and herbs, and like we can feed our community here, and we sunk all of our savings into this tent. And I was like, I had always worked in hospitality from high school and college and South America. And I was like, I think that I'm going to go look for a job. And there was a place called the Farm and Fisherman about 15 minutes away. And I was like, I knew nothing about them except that they had the word farm in their name. And I was like, maybe they'll buy our produce. So I go in there for like what I'm hoping is just a part-time job until we really settle into farming. And it was just, I'd never been in a restaurant like that before, where like the farmers, the ingredients, the technique was the centerpiece of everything. And like service was very approachable, but very professional. And it just was, I was just enamored by the whole thing. And like I had certainly eaten at good restaurants, like traveling. And I was, this is like when Anthony Bourdain was kind of coming on my radar. And Mind of a Chef and Chef's Table had just come out. I'm like, this is really interesting. Like, I don't know much about this world, but there was something kind of drawing me to it. And I'm on the farm and I'm like realizing like, hey, there's ethnobotany all around me here. I don't know why I always felt like I had to be in the Amazon to experience that, you know? So like I'm learning, I'm watching the cycles of the seasons and plants come alive in the spring and flowers blooming. And I got my foraging book and my phone app. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? Wow, this smells really good. How have people used this in the past? Oh my God, it's edible. That's cool. And it's kind of coalescing at this time where like my trajectory at the farm and Fisherman, they were like sort of pushing me a little bit to the bar because they were seeing that with surplus and bounty, I was starting to like preserve, whether that was like pickling or jamming or fermenting or putting a whole bunch of ingredients in vodka and seeing what kind of liqueur I can make.
The farm and the Fisherman, is that all farm to table stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. Like
they were already used to kind of what you were doing.
And like real deal. I mean, like bringing in, hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of produce every week from farmers. Like I see.
Definitely still around right now.
It is. Yeah. I think they're 12 years old at this point, and they're on Route 70 in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Super easy to drive past, but it is a great, great tavern. And I still, I haven't worked there now for 2 years, but I still frequent it all the time. Nice. I love it. So all this kind of coalesces, and they're like, you should work behind the bar. Things didn't work out at that farm we were working on. So I switched from full-time farmer to part-time restaurant person. And I kind of swapped to like full-time restaurant person, part-time farmer. So I started working with Jack at Urban Roots Farm, and I was working with Teddy at Plowshare Farms, and so I'm kind of like just starting to get into the bar. I convinced them to let me build a real big garden behind the restaurant, and that sort of became what we built our bar program off of. But I was still doing a lot of foraging. We were still sourcing a ton from farmers, and it was like, I always kind of say like, early on, I realized I can't just make syrups out of everything. There has to be different things that I can do with the materials and ingredients that we were bringing in. And so I just started to like explore all these different methods of preservation. Whether that my backpack's out there, but I have like a little card. I was taught a class on this today, but I have a card of like all the different directions you can go with one ingredient. And we started to build our bar program around that. Whether we're making liqueurs all year, we're fermenting our own sodas, our own kombuchas, our own lacto ferments, and building this like very botanical, process-driven program at a very high volume place. I think a lot of people when they hear slow drinks are like, "Oh, this must be like some boutique little 10-seat bar." But
I have a question about this because I've heard you talk in the past about this is putting the emphasis more on the ingredients, not just like higher end liquors.
Yes.
And you can save money that way because, you're literally foraging.
Yep.
It's free besides just you picking it up off a plant or off the ground or whatever. But I mean, are you able to do that like on a commercial level? Like how much work does it take? Like, can a normal restaurant even do this? Or is it like, you're pretty much someone like you needs to be there full time to manage this?
Yeah, like by the end of my time there, which I was there almost 10 years, by the end of my time there, we had like basically a designated bar prep cook.
Okay.
And so it is definitely, there's labor that goes into it, but a lot of that overhead is taken out by not like needing to order, from a purveyor or a farmer.
It's probably part of the sell too. Probably a lot of people are coming in because you're doing stuff differently.
Totally. And yeah, the focal point of the drink becomes almost the ingredient, not the spirit, which is like...
And that's way cooler. It's actually unique then. It's not just everybody in the world can do this.
Yeah. Totally.
If they just like, if everyone's buying the same high-end liquor, like what makes this special then? Right.
And I think that cocktail culture has really been built on like, I call it the back of the bottle model, that like on the back of a bottle of Campari, it's telling you how to make a Negroni. And that if you're having that Negroni in Philadelphia or New York or Shanghai, it should taste the same way every single time. That doesn't really excite me. It's great to know what a Negroni tastes like at its baseline, but like, do you want all of your beers to taste the same? Do you want wine to all taste the same? No, like variation and the variability and the living element is like the coolest part.
That's what makes it fun.
Exactly. So like, I think that the way we were doing things at farm, and of course, like, you know, I haven't really said how I made the leap from like, I'm going to be a doctor to I'm going to be a bartender but like realizing like there's something here, I can still do the ethnobotany that I was always so passionate about. And no one's having this conversation for some reason. And the few places that were like, you know, a bar in London, a bar in Melbourne, like, you know, a bar or two in the US. But it's like nobody was really like focusing on the botanical side of things.
What I don't know much about cocktails, to be honest. Was there like a cocktail revolution in the past? Like kind of how like there was the craft revolution?
Yeah.
Was it kind of at some point like, everyone started doing this or?
So, you know, pre-prohibition is the golden age, right? And then prohibition happens and all the great bartender, you know, bartending is an American craft, right? It was born here on American soil, which is really cool. But after Prohibition was enacted here, all of these great American bartenders went elsewhere. They went to Cuba, they went to South America, they went to Europe. And we were kind of left without much talent here. And, you know, when we think of like how people drank in the years after Prohibition, so like in the 30s, 40s, 50s, it was still some semblance of, you know, old fashions. Think of like Mad Men or Manhattans, like some classic cocktails like that. But the like craft of bartending vanished. And really like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, like that's what everybody kind of calls the dark ages, right? Everything's a martini, Cosmos, Appletinis, like disco drinks. You know, tiki is the thing that happened in there, which is still a thing. And
Tiki's my go-to.
Yeah.
I love a tiki cocktail.
Same. They're great. So that was one like shining light in it all. But the cocktail renaissance happened in like a little bit late 90s, early 2000s, and then like 2010 really kind of started. And so that's like, at first it was like everybody just relearning the classics and going back to all these old books and, you know, finding like our obscure recipes and testing them. Are they any good? Maybe like, let's keep this one around. We can maybe let that one go by the wayside. But then creativity started to come into it. And I think that I kind of came into it always from that element of like, I wanted to make drinks that were botanically focused, rather than like super exotic flavors or spices. I wanted to do things that were of this place and a certain time of year.
Yeah, I mean, you're farming, you're
Totally.
foraging. It's like it's whatever you can find around you in that season.
Yep.
So you're making drinks. I guess you're running the beverage program over
Yeah.
there. When did you start writing? I mean, you're an amazing writer. Has that always been a part of what you do?
I wrote a very long thesis in college that my advisors joked was the longest thesis in the University of Delaware history.
Was that if for undergrad you had to do a thesis?
For what I did, like undergrad.
We were studying in undergrad.
I found this great loophole at UDel called the interdepartmental major, where I could like basically build my course load to what I was interested in. So it was biology, but like focused on pre-med. Anthropology, focused on South American ethnology, but also like ethnobotany, plant science, and Spanish. So I just kind of piecemealed a curriculum together.
That's pretty cool.
And I wrote
Much better than mine. Yeah, C-level management degree.
Communication studies.
well, you're using your communication studies. So yeah, I pieced together the curriculum, and I write a very long thesis on the groups that I worked with, the plants that I collected, their whole like worldview of shamanism and religion, and my lab results. You know, I tested these plants in the lab for a long time, and I really enjoyed that process. It was really hard, but like I was so proud of it. I really got into it. So in like 2017, as I'm like trying to think about drinks this way, I'm like, I'm just going to start a Google Doc, and I don't know what this will become, but I think there's something percolating. And the first bit of attention that our bar program ever got at Farm and Fisherman was from a writer named Jen Hall at Edible Jersey. She did this little like write up on my wife and I, And
What is your wife? Your wife is involved with this stuff also?
so she was at that time a florist.
Okay.
She's an artist. She understands aesthetics and composition and color and design and all of those things. She worked we met at a restaurant. We worked at Catherine Rooney's Irish Pub at University of Delaware. But she's never bartended or anything like that. So like all of the visual side and branding side of Slow Drinks is Katie. And she's always, we've always been a team, whether that's backpacking or living in the tent or whatever. And, Jen comes over and interviews us. She's like, I think there's a book somewhere here. And I said, I think so too. I just I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. So she says, let me talk to my editor. Maybe you can write for Edible Jersey. So in 2018, I published my first edible article. 2018, 2019, 2020. In that time, I'm writing, but I'm also writing a book proposal with the editor from the magazine, Teresa Politano. She passed away, but it was so instrumental in this whole process because, again, when you think I want to write a book, that's amazing, but that's like step 1 of 100 to write a book. You have to shop and pitch and find comps and all these things.
And are you? So we've had some other people that have written books on before, and kind of people have different ways that they do it. Are you write like 2 chapters and you say does this work, or do you kind of lay out the whole basis for the book and should I write a book on this?
I laid out the whole basis and a very in-depth outline, and that's kind of what you shop around. You have little excerpts from the book. Mm-hmm. So I'm shopping around, and I think we have a deal in 2020, but the pandemic happens, it falls through. During that time, this agent reaches out. He says, I'm Jonas Strauss. I have this boutique literary agency in California. I've been following you for a long time, and I think you have something here. I said, well, this is great. He represented Death & Co. on all 3 of their books. These are 2 of the top-selling cocktail books. 2 of them are the top-selling cocktail books of all time. Smuggler's Cove, your tiki guy, he represented them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these are I idolize these people. And I said, well, look, I just had a deal fall through. How about I give you the proposal and we start from there? He said, this is good, but we still have a long way to go. You really have to paint the picture because this is out there for publishers. This is not proven. No one's written this. And we were told no over and over. And always it came back to you don't have enough followers on Instagram. Your platform's not big enough.
So stupid. It's what comes first?
Chicken or the egg, right? Exactly. And that's what I always said. Well, if our book's successful, it will, the followers will come. And so we start shopping around. We come down to 2. And the 11th hour, one of the 2 says, sorry. They were the editor was very excited. She's like, this is great. No one's done this. Her marketing team's their platform's not big enough. And no one's really writing books like this. So we went with Hardy Grant. I love our editor, Jenny Wabner. We wrote this, the way that our process worked was we had the outline. I'd write a chapter. I'd give it to her.
Slice it having.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Fine.
She'd give feedback and then I'd go to the next chapter. So I would just do it 1 chapter at a time.
You started complete 1 chapter, go to the next one.
Exactly. And we got a really good workflow, and I'm so happy that it happened the way it happened with the timeline it happened and all of that. And then the book comes out in October 2023 and it wins the James Beard Award in June of 2024. And, it's crazy. I walked out of the award ceremony and I saw one of those publishers who told me no. And he said, are you going to call me a fucking asshole now? And I said, no, I'm not, but I told you, dude, so.
I'll sign your book if you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
You also have a very clean Instagram. It's very aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you.
Going through it today.
That's all Katie.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all Katie.
I was thinking it was. When you were saying that, I was like, the pictures are really clean and it all kind of blends together. So it looks good.
Yeah.
Hey, brewery or small business owner, are you tired of navigating complex brewery accounting and taxes on your own? Staying up late working on financials and getting your finances in order after a whole workday? At the Beer Accountant, they understand the unique financial challenges of the craft brewing industry. They're a CPA dedicated to helping breweries like yours thrive, with services ranging from qualified bookkeeping, business tax prep, to strategic financial planning. Stop wasting time on spreadsheets and focus on what you do best: making great beer and running a small business, servicing over 50 breweries in 4 states. So if you own a brewery or small business, stop overpaying for reactive support and start being proactive with the Beer Accountant. Don't brew that IPA without this CPA. Visit beeraccountant.com to learn how their specialized expertise can help your brewery grow, profit, and succeed.
Yeah.
So, like, the Slow Drinks brand is kind of you and Katie. Is that what the original article was about? Like, kind of like you guys creating this revolution that was, local foraging and kind of doing stuff your own way?
The original article was called "In the Kitchen," and it was a cool thing. It was like basically looking at the state of New Jersey and finding a chef or bartender or brewer and going to their home kitchen and like examining what they do. And so like we got into some of that stuff and like what my background was, what Katie's background was, how our kitchen became to be, like what it was. And we, but it wasn't like super into like what Slow Drinks was, because at that time, at that time, interestingly, I had the handle Slow Drinks, but I had never posted a single thing to it. I was like, we should talk about slow food in this conversation.
I was going to say, because Slow Drinks is you guys, but Slow Foods is like kind of this much larger thing.
Yeah. So I just, like, when I found out about slow food, I just had the most admiration for it. And I'm like, this is amazing. Who's doing this in beverage? And so I go on Instagram and I look like, what does, I just search on Instagram Slow Drinks and nothing exists. And you got shorted.
Thank you.
I thought I had it under control. I'm wrong.
I find this handle that's available, and I get it, and I'm like, it's this golden egg. And I'm like, what do I do? Am I even the guy to do this? And
You should sell it to them for $20,000.
right, or like start using it, and like, are they going to send me a cease and desist or something? So I sit on it until this article comes out, and then I'm in the kitchen article, and I'm like, we're going to start posting now. And so like I look back at our old posts sometimes and smile, because it's there, the identity's there, but the voice isn't quite there, the photos are different. Like, it took us a minute to really catch our stride.
I mean, as with anyone, you're creating it. It's not like you start off like just this perfectly polished product.
Yeah, like I look at my old Instagram photos and I'm like, what is going on?
I can't. I archive most of mine. I'm like, these
just
are
with like the business page. I'm like, man, I was so bad at this. Yeah. It was really, really rough. Period.
Well, it's a learning process, right? Like, what do your people respond to? What do you like? What do you respond to? You kind of have to like find this whole new part of yourself.
Did you find that when you're writing the edible articles? Were you getting feedback?
Yeah.
Because I guess they probably had an editor, and you were like, and you're learning how to write professionally.
Yes. And like I'll never forget the first article I wrote. It was all about rhubarb, and it was like very like ethnobotanical. It was very like academic. And she was like, hey, this is like very informative, but like no one cares about this. Like, they want to hear about you, and like make this about like your story. And like, you can put these little, Easter eggs in there and tidbits of information, but like make the reader connect with you.
Yeah, it's not your thesis. It's reading material.
Right.
A casual reading.
Exactly.
So did you have, I guess you were kind of already an expert at this, but did you have kind of one lane that you kind of leaned into? I mean, you said your first thing was rhubarb. Is there certain ingredients that you tend to lean on? It
was like, so yeah, definitely. Rhubarb was one, pawpaws were one, sassafras, pine. I'm trying to think of my like earliest things. My earliest things from edible. Peach pits, making like your amaretto with peach pits. Amaro, did how to make your own Amaro recipe in there. So like, again, things that are hidden in plain sight. and for that could be found in New Jersey, which for all intents and purposes can be found here in Pennsylvania. But I always like what interested me with slow food was just a quick overview of slow food. Started in Italy in the mid 1980s. Student activist Carlo Petrini, basically in protest of the first McDonald's being built, and him and his buddies basically were like, "Fuck fast food. We have the opposite here in Italy. We have slow food. We have farmers who grow the ingredients adapted to grow here. We have techniques in the kitchens and and in our culture to like change them, make them nutritious for us, to preserve them. We don't want these burgers from the US. Like, that's antithetical to who we are." And it strikes a chord, and it strikes a chord throughout Europe. Comes to the US with like Alice Waters and Chez Panisse and California in the 80s. And now it's this international organization that I often liken to the United Nations of food. It's in 160 countries, over 2,000 communities. They have all these different subsets. They have slow fish, slow meat, slow cheese, slow grains, slow beans, like all kinds of different things. And they have this one called the Arc of Taste. The Arc of Taste so that was how I started working with slow food. I'm a committee member on the Northeast and New England Arc of Taste. And it's in most of those 160 countries, but it basically identifies and champions at-risk, endangered, and underappreciated foods. So that could be like a certain heirloom fruit or tomato, or like a type of livestock that was raised for a long time but has kind of gone out of favor, or a certain fish, or a grain, But it also could be a process, or it can be like a product, like Berliner Weiss. I was just in Germany last week. Berliner Weiss is on the German Arc of Taste.
I was in Germany last week, or the 21st. I was in Munich for Oktoberfest.
Damn, we just missed each other.
Yeah, right?
Did you have any brewing advice?
No. I didn't drink a single one. It's just strictly Oktoberfest.
Love that.
Yeah.
So it attracted me from like the ethnobotanical standpoint of like, this is this catalog of biodiversity and things that people have used in food and drink for a long time. Mm-hmm. But I realized like really the conversations around beverage and slow food just weren't really happening. Slow wine has always been important. Slow wine was, I think, officially founded like 10, 15 years ago. But, from Carlo Petrini's original manifesto from the 80s, wine was always very important. Coffee in the last 5 years has become important. So the Slow Coffee Coalition. Beer, there was a moment in the U.S. and Mexico where they were really trying to form this like slow beer coalition. Cider a little bit, but spirits, mixed drinks, like cocktails, non-alc, other types of ferments that defy the categories of beer and wine, they just weren't really being talked about.
How did that, like you grabbed the handle slow drinks before you started talking to them? Did you start posting on there and like you had enough content at some point, and you just like made the introduction like, hey, are you guys interested in partnering with this? Or did they kind of see you and approach you?
So I learned about slow food when I read about this guy from South Jersey, Jeff Quattrone, who just published a book called The Iconic Jersey Tomato. He's a tomato aficionado, yeah. But he's a food activist and a seed saver, and he was setting up these like seed libraries. Really cool concept. You go check out seeds at the beginning of the season, grow your garden. You got to return seeds at the end of the season for other people. So I read about that he had found the seeds for the original Campbell's soup tomato from Camden, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Brought them back, grew them out, and he was harvesting them again after like decades or like almost a century of not being around. And I said, hey, I'm really trying to build a bar program with things similar to this at Farm and Fisherman. Could you help me source seeds? Could you come talk to our staff? We're going to plant the garden. So we got all these really cool South Jersey and Philly heirlooms. Philadelphia at that time was the seed capital of the U.S. So
why is that?
Because Jersey was the garden state. And so the city was here and the farms were there.
Got it.
And really fascinating. So William Mall and Sons was like the big one. So that's like where like the long hot pepper came from, and really probably the first people bringing like.
Wait, the long hot peppers from New Jersey?
Well, it's from Italy originally. And, well, even more originally, it's from South America.
All right.
But it was brought in.
That'd blow my mind.
It was brought in and like marketed long hots as a by the Philadelphia Seed Company.
Yeah.
Mall's Long Hot is what it was called. Broccoli Rob, they're the first people selling Broccoli Rob commercially. And, you know, like the Jenny Lind melon is one of the things he brought. Really interesting story with that I'm not going to get super into it, but it's a melon that was the most popular melon in Philadelphia and New York for like 100 years and then just disappeared because it doesn't store well. You can't put it on a grocery store shelf. You can't ship it across the country. So, but of course, like the reason you can is because it's so high in sugar, which means it's so delicious, you know?
Yeah.
So like he brought the Philadelphia fish pepper, right? This is like an heirloom from like Black communities between Baltimore and Philadelphia. They would use them in their fish houses to like in their green state add heat without adding color. And like just finding all out this Horace Pippin was his grandfather saved the seeds. He gave them to William Woys Weaver's grandfather because he was sick, and William Woys Weaver's grandfather would treat him with leeches to suck his blood. William Woys Weaver gets the seeds. He writes this book called Heirloom Vegetable Gardening, and like now they're kind of like on people's radar again. And this was like all what the Ark of Taste.
What years was this? This is way back when?
The like seed, the bloodletting with the leeches, and the seed trading for the treatment. That was like decades ago.
Okay.
William Woys Weaver wrote Heirloom Vegetable Gardening probably in like the early 2000s, maybe even late 90s. I don't know the exact year. But then like, you know, some of these things like the Jimmy Nardello pepper, if that rings a bell.
No.
Another Ark of Taste thing that like you go to any cool restaurant in Philly right now and chances are you'll see Nardellos on the.
Okay, cool.
Now I'm going to keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is I'm getting off topic here, but I'm working on this Ark of Taste committee, and we're building this bar program around like heirloom regional ingredients to here. And eventually Slow Food finds out what I'm doing, and they're like, I think it speaks volumes about them, where they're not like, hey, you can't use that name. They're like, we love what you're doing. We really want you to work with us on this like global movement. Mm-hmm. And so I started kind of doing a little bit of collaboration with them during the pandemic. Even prior, I went out to like Denver to this like conference they had there, and that was like my first pop-up outside of this area. And you know, to fast forward to now, they have the rights to our book in Italian. Slow Food Editore is the publisher of Slow Drink. It's Slow Drink is the plural in Italian, which is interesting. But we're now forming this slow beverage initiative as like an entire umbrella category of its own, looking at coffee, tea, wine, sake, cider, beer.
It's cool. Your book kind of kickstarted, and like you writing the book, kind of kickstarted like this whole, global kind of movement now that you're expanding to slow foods.
That is has always been the dream, and like to be watching it happen right now is.
Your book
surreal.
is great, but do you think that's part of the reason why the award and like kind of all these accolades came so fast? Like, did they see the movement that you were doing behind the scenes, or is it just a product of the book itself?
I think that the James Beard Foundation is very good at looking at books that are pushing the needle, especially in a positive direction. And so when we're talking about things that are inherently promoting sustainability, biodiversity, local sourcing, fermentation, and really no other book in the category had been written like it. They could see that and say, this is new, this is important, this deserves this. We were up for another award that year for Tales of the Cocktail, which is much more like conservative, I guess, and like what they award or what they like find merit in, I guess. And so like we lost that year to like a book on ice cube, like Clear Ice. Super, I'm a big fan of Clear Ice, but And like, no offense to Camper, like Camper's amazing. But I don't know. Yeah,
you don't need to say anything.
So I really valued the James Beard Committee for doing that. And also the book that won the Beard Award in the same category this past year was another book by Jim Meehan and Emma Jansen and Bart Sasso called The Bartender's Pantry that was also very much focused on the same thing. Also, to go back to when we won in 24, another Philadelphian won. We won beverage book with recipes. Another Philadelphian won beverage book without recipes. David Suro of Tequilas and La Jefa.
So I got connected to you because I'm trying to get beer into tequilas.
Oh, cool.
La Jefa. So how did you get connected to them? Because I know David's the father, right?
Yep.
They own
Siembra. Yep.
Siembra.
Yep.
And that's a mezcal company, right? Tequila.
Tequila originally, though they have Siembra Metal in their portfolio.
Okay.
It's also now their like spirit importing brand, so they have a few mezcals in their portfolio now as well.
Cool.
That they don't directly make. Even Siembra Metal they don't make. And the tequilas they don't make. They contract distilled the stuff on the Siembra brand, but they import agave spirits.
So that's how you got connected to them, was just like you guys were both making this book kind of at the same time?
No, I got connected to them through Dan Suro, David's youngest son.
Who's now running tequilas, right?
Who's running La Jefa. Okay. And David and David Jr. run tequilas.
Okay.
And Dan saw a video I posted about brewing root beer with sassafras root. And he was like, how do you do this? And so I said, I just sent him some pages from the book, which wasn't out at that time yet. And I said, the easiest way would be to talk in person and like I can give you a better rundown, but like this is from the book and kind of we'll do a good job explaining it. So we sit down and talk, and like, of course, these like really low alcohol ferments are such a huge part of Mexican tradition, going back to pre-Hispanic times. So tepache or teguino or colonche or there's all these different examples, atoles, pulque. These are all like really low alcohol ferments from the different ingredients that are there. And so he was really interested in making that a part of the La Jefa program. And so we went to Mexico together in 2023 and kind of studied some of these pre-Hispanic ferments. And then kind of like ideated together, well, like how do we do this and execute it here in Philly at La Jefa, and like also on draft. He really wanted to have a draft ferment program, and so that's how I kind of got involved.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like everything that they're doing over there, and I'm trying to get involved any way I can.
Cool.
But like what did you guys do down in Mexico? I'm trying to get more involved with Mexico because my fiance lives in Oaxaca.
Oh, cool.
And she's very connected to kind of like the mezcal scene down there.
Awesome.
And I'm trying to like plug into the Mexico scene. So I'm interested in like what exactly you're doing in Mexico. Like,
yeah.
Where were you?
So on that trip, we went to Jalisco.
Okay.
And we spent time in Guadalajara. We went to the Highlands.
Is that where their tequila's from?
Yes. All tequila, by definition, from Jalisco. Guadalajara is the main city, the capital city of the state.
Cool.
Jalisco. And we went up to the highlands, and we went down to the lowlands, and we went mushroom foraging on the Tequila volcano. And we visited really small producers of mezcal up in the mountains. We visited this guy, Don Ramon, who was making like tuba. There's this like interchange between the Philippines and Mexico. Unfortunately, because of Spanish slavery, it's called the galleon trade. So a lot of like, still today, a lot of mezcal is produced in Filipino stills, which are wild. It's like a hollowed out tree trunk with a fire burning inside and a vat of a ferment, pulque basically, and then a condensation dish, and then a catching chamber. So like it's a very rudimentary form of distillation, but It's makes some of the most like interesting mezcals, like so full of character, and you just can't replicate that in an industrial setting. So we go down there and we're like studying these different ferments, tehuino, like I said, colonche, tuba, pulque, and then we're visiting producers of tequila, and we're visiting producers of mezcal, and then of course, like in my mind, I'm like, all right, well, how do we tell the story of Jalisco from a botanical perspective locally? So, like, what are things that we are seeing people use here and grow here, and what can we find that are either analogs, either identical species that grow well in the mid-Atlantic, or things that are in the same genus that grow well here. So we saw a lot of elderflower growing there, and certainly we have a lot of that growing here. We saw mezcal is like medicine, so we saw mezcals where they had like horehound or rue or wormwood infusing in there, or garlic, to like cure these different ailments.
And you're like you're taking those and then putting them in the cocktails, then you're making out La Jefa.
Yes, and we're like, well, how there's a specific chili pepper that grows there called the Awalica that's like really important in Guadalajara. We can grow that here, and we can use that in our program. Even that Filipino still, it's usually done in like a parota tree. Do
those mezcals, do they taste more woody? Like, is it like very distinct that's coming out of those?
Certainly. I mean, like the one producer that they worked with, I'm drawing a blank on the name, Don Mateo. He's from Michoacan, and like he doesn't farm agave. He lets them grow wild in a pine forest. He burns them. He cooks them over pine wood. He ferments them in pine vats, and then he distills them in pine. Like, yeah, there's pine in every step of that process. That's
cool.
So yeah, then we just started like kind of thinking of like botanical analogs here, like that parota tree for the Filipinos still. That's the same family as like the locust trees that you see dropping their big bean pods all over the city. They're all kind of dropping right now. Mm-hmm. So like honey locust, that was really important to Native Americans here. They can get up to 80% sugar content in those pods, which is crazy. Wow. And so like...
Are you making fermentables with those?
Totally. And that's how I first discovered them. I'm like, what smells like booze on my running trail? And I'm like, oh my God, it's these pods. Like, and then like... a week or two later, I'm like, what smells like vinegar? It's the pods, because now they've oxidizing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's how, like, if you've heard of or been to Bar Almanac, which I'm a partner in, it's a Japanese-American cocktail bar, kind of filtered through the lens of slow drinks. How do we look at Japan and find botanical analogs from what grows there to here? So certainly a lot of different foraging overlaps, just being in the Northern Hemisphere in a similar, like, climate. But then we found like this farmer from Delaware who's like third generation, like the grandfather and two generations under him are farming like strictly Japanese heirlooms there. So we're able to get like really interesting varietals of like ginger and bitter melon and like.
Do you taste it? Because we have a lot of hop people here, all right, people that use hops. Obviously, we're a beer podcast, and we talk a lot about how hops in different areas taste differently. Like, are you able to taste like imagine the heirloom stuff from Japan tastes much different when it's grown in Delaware.
Totally,
stuff that's coming from Japan.
Totally, and I don't know that it's better or worse.
Just different.
Just different, and certainly some things are more adapt to grow in their climate than other ones. Even here in the U.S., an heirloom from the Southeast that likes hot, humid, wet summers might not do as well here where it's not, during a dry year or something like that. So certainly there's variation in terroir and whatever you're eating and consuming. And, whatever you're preparing, you just need to, the good thing about mixed drinks is you're tinkering always until the very end,
Do you work with, you say foraging, do you ever work with like fungus or mushrooms or anything? Yeah, a little bit. It's not my specialty. It's like it gets so confusing.
Totally. I think I'm more knowledgeable than many, but definitely not confident enough to I know what I feel comfortable harvesting.
Yeah.
Chanterelles, chicken of the woods, hen of the woods.
I feel like a lot of that
oysters.
stuff is more food based almost.
Yeah. I mean, there certainly, I use mushrooms in drinks too. But I'm not like spore printing to make sure that like this bolete is safe versus that one. But yeah, well, I mean, it has flavor and it grows around here. I'm interested in it always.
Yeah. Do you have like I've seen you do like a lot of, I don't even know what you call them, collaborations, but you're working with other bars and there's other, like a crafty bartender in Philly. Like there's other people that are like, have made them names out of themselves as bartenders or
Sure.
like liquor forward, I guess, people.
Yeah.
Do you have like an identity as far as like when you do these collaborations? Are there certain drinks that you go after or certain ingredients that kind of like people are going out and like they're following you around and they're, looking for you to use certain things?
Yeah. I mean, like at this point, I'm doing this like around the country and even outside of the country. I was back in Mexico in February and March of this year and taking what I do here, not from an ingredient perspective, but a process perspective, and applying Mexican ingredients to that. So as far as like what my identity is in that, I always like to collaborate. Like I'm not like, these are my drinks and please help me prep them so I can do the same. I think I've done 5% of the cocktails from the slow drinks book again, like in events. Like I'm always wanting to try new things and new techniques and new flavors.
Is there a certain drink though? Like, is there a base drink that you do that you like kind of remix on?
It's more like style of drinks. I always do a soda. I often do a shrub.
What's a shrub?
It's a mix of vinegar, sugar, and an ingredient.
Okay.
So like if it was like persimmon, sugar, and white balsamic or something like that.
Okay.
I often do a liqueur of some sort or an amaro. And then, there's other things that I do as well. Lacto ferment, I do a lot. That's something like sauerkraut and kimchi are the most common examples, but you can lacto ferment anything. And then I say, okay, well, like we should do a tall drink with the soda, some sort of highball or mule or something. The sprit or the shrub, maybe we do a spritz, maybe we do a sour. We've got the lacto ferment. That's a little salty, a little funky. That could be used in a lot of different ways, but maybe a martini is really good with that. Kind of like the liqueur, let's do something stronger, like an old fashioned or Manhattan with that. So like, I always like something long, strong, and sour, and then maybe like a variable from there.
And are you actually getting behind the bar and making these? I mean, you said you're going down to Mexico. Whenever I go down there, there's bartender collaborations everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's every bar is a cocktail bar, and they're always having like guest bartenders.
Yeah.
It's like a rotation of like bars just sharing their bartenders. Are you actually sitting there making all these drinks, or you kind of make the program and then you kind of act as the host for the night?
It can go either way. Sometimes I'm behind the bar, and sometimes I'm there signing books and talking to people, and kind of being like a host.
Cool.
If it's a menu that we curate, I have no problem being back there and making drinks. If it's super crazy and people are calling for like the house's cocktails, my only rule is like, just don't make me ring shit in the computer. Like, give me a guy to take care of that, and I can make all the drinks. But I'm not behind the stick as much as I used to be, certainly. But I still really enjoy it when I get to.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I guess you said so. We're running out of time, but you work with Tonewood, but you said you also work with The Seed?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we did a collaboration in, I think, 2023. And we did 2 releases. It was just for their beer club. One was, they were like the elvish words from Lord of the Rings. One was dark and one was night or light. And dark was like black walnut and elderberry, and I can't really remember what else.
Were they both saisons?
Yes.
Yes.
Of like old stock barrels that they had that we were kind of like reintroducing things to. And I know light had fig leaf in it, I think. what the hell else? I don't know. It was a long time ago.
We've talked with a couple people recently, and I talked like on some other podcasts and stuff. I think craft beer is kind of at this inflection point right now. Like there's a lot of things happening, and everyone talks about year of the lager. Like there's a lot more lagers out right now. I think I love craft lagers. At some point, it's kind of a race towards zero. Like craft beer is really like the premium beer segment. You have to add value back to the customer. How you do that? In, mid 2010s, a lot of breweries, high-end craft breweries were making Belgian beers and farmhouse beers with like different ingredients in them. And I think that is a great way for craft breweries to kind of make new things that are not just another hazy IPA and add value back into things. And I think that like somebody like you and something that like what you guys stepped on with Tonewood and the Seed are like a great way for a brewery to kind of like reinvent themselves and kind of like keep pushing craft beer forwards.
I agree. I talk about this a lot because like, in the book I have, this is how you make a beer out of anything, right? But my definition of a beer, like I'll call anything under 10% a beer.
I agree with you. I mean, a high noon, a Surfside, that's a fucking beer. I don't care what you say. That's just a fancy beer.
Yeah. But I think like with wine and with beer, we've become very like locked into rules. Malt, hops, yeast, water, grapes, and that's not how people have fermented for most of human history. There's been medicinal plants, there's been narcotic plants, there's been different type flowers, vegetables, different types of berries in these different ferments. I think we're like obsessed with categorization and classification, and I think that is like, I don't know, it's a little bit detrimental to growth and experimentation, and like certainly it's definitely been a tough couple years for craft breweries. Something that maybe is new and brings in new customers and clientele and people, I think would be good for both the clientele and the breweries themselves. So I'm always like, for me, I'm searching for new flavors constantly.
Yeah, I think like what Michael Jackson did back in like the 80s, basically categorizing and like defining what these beer styles were, was needed because nobody knew what these beer styles were. He kind of invented the craft beer industry. But the general public is aware of what craft beer is now. They're aware of kind of all these different styles. So what we use these, restrictions to kind of build the industry by defining these things. Yeah. We don't need, it's now a detriment, like we said, a detriment to us. And like we've seen now, like GABF, I would love to see how many people entered beers this year, but I imagine it's way down from the year before. Sure. Probably because, it's not just like the awards are less important, but people are finding like less value in kind of these stringent rules of like what is specific beers.
Yeah. I mean, it's like what I said with what cocktails were, the back of the bottle model, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you have these rules and regulations for how to make a cocktail, but I think that the cocktail world has kind of gotten past that.
Yeah.
Where like, all right, we all know how a good lager should taste, right? Yeah. We like, and not that we shouldn't always have the option to have a great lager. We should, but like, what are some other innovations we can make within the category?
Definitely.
Or outside the category.
Definitely. And I love what you said, how like anything under 10%, 0 to 10% beer, 10 to 20% wine, 20% above liquor.
Yeah. Using honey, it's meat. Yeah. That's explicitly outlined in Slow Drinks, the book, which by the way is available on our website, slowdrinks.co, or Amazon, of course, and anywhere else good books are sold.
And it's an amazing book. And also like, the work that your wife did is amazing also. It can also just sit on your, not that it's not a coffee table book, but it looks amazing.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It can totally sit on a coffee table.
Yeah. Cool. Do you have anything else?
I don't got anything else other than what's like your favorite cocktail right now? Do you got one?
My favorite cocktail right now.
What are you drinking?
So I'll be honest with you. I'm a wine guy. I love wine. I love beer too, especially in the summer. Like, out in the garden, like
what kind of beer are you drinking then? Let's get that one out.
Pils, lager, I'll still have like a pale ale or an IPA sometimes. I love saisons a lot, but like when I'm like thinking how I want to unwind at the end of my week, like I'm always like I want wine, bubbles, cold, sparkling, whatever. But cocktail wise, like I really like things with big flavors. So like Jamaican rums or Fernet or Scotch. Depending on the year, like a lot, like in the summer, I love a gin and tonic. Negroni and Boulevardier are always like standbys for me because, you know, I'm not really making elaborate cocktails at home. It's like, you know,
Simple.
yeah. Like how many brewers or like winemakers I know that are like, I just want a Coors Light.
Yeah.
And chefs go home, they're like, yeah, I'm eating like mac and cheese.
Yeah,
chicken
totally.
tenders.
It's good to know that I've got a great bar at home, and I'll make things that are easy, but that I know will be delicious.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. So I guess where can we find you at Slow Drinks?
At Slow Drinks, yep. Always doing classes and pop-ups, and you know, go to Almanac. Like if people want to see what a slow drink looks like, go sit at Bar Almanac or La Jefa and enjoy yourselves.
Sweet. And then where can we find you?
At Beermill Dave or at Beermill WC.
Or at Beermill itself. Go in there and buy some Space Cadet beer.
Yeah. You're right.
You can find me at Space Cadet Beer and then find us at Brewdat and at the Brewdat Podcast. And we'll see you guys next week.